Hello everybody, here's today's Daily Dose. Now I'm sure most of us will agree that one of the most challenging question types is spot the error or finding errors. So understanding the need for some quick tips and concepts, here's presenting to you rules to help you spot those errors faster. In this video, we will look at 3 such rules. Rule number 1, omission of articles. Now there are various instances where we don't need the definite article or the indefinite article, right? So in such cases, you can just completely avoid or omit the articles altogether. What cases am I talking about? Let's say before the names of academic subjects, right? For example, I love history. I don't say I love the history. Or even when you're referring to meal times in a general sense, right? Did you have breakfast? You don't say, did you have the breakfast? Or how was lunch? You don't say people saying, how was the lunch? Right? Except, of course, if they're talking about a specific instance. Right? So, keep this in mind. And let's take a look at an example sentence to understand this better. Let's take a look at this question. As soon as you look at this question, you have an idea, right? This is, there's a phrase in the context which is highlighted in bold, and then there are some options. We'd probably have to, look at the options and see if we need to replace the highlighted phrase in the context, right? So this is nothing but phrase substitution or sentence improvement. Either ways, you can look at it. So anybody wants to take a guess and see which one of these options we can replace? And in every question, we're going to look at a rule, right? We're going to learn a rule. So the question is, I love the literature, the music, the art. We have 4 options and then we have no improvement. So anybody wants to quickly guess the rule? The obvious thing that is staring in front of us in literature, music, art, right? What are these? Some sort of a literature, academic subjects, right? People take music, people take art, people take literature. So the rule is you need to omit articles before either academic subjects or mealtime, basically omission of articles. That's the rule, right? There are certain instances, certain situations where you need to omit the article. There are various, like for example, proper nouns, right? With names, we don't use the article in front of proper nouns. We don't use articles in front of abstract nouns, right? So for example, freedom is misused, right? Or honesty is the best policy, right? So honesty and freedom are abstract nouns. So we don't say the honesty is the best policy or the freedom is misused. Are you following? So in this context, we're talking about academic subjects here. So you can omit the. So the only option that gives that is option 1 without the article, right? So that's your, and even at mealtime, people say, so did you have breakfast? They don't say, did you have the breakfast? Did you have lunch? They don't say, did you have the lunch, right? So those who said option 1, correct, right? So the rule number 1 that you need to keep in mind is omit articles for names of academic subjects, mealtime, proper nouns, abstract nouns, right? Used in a general sense, when you're using it in a general sense, not specifically, right? So these are things that you need to keep in mind. So the extra, etc. is nothing but, in front of proper nouns, in front of abstract nouns, and this when it is used in a general sense. Right? And there are various other instances where you need to omit the article, right? You can look it up. So that's the first rule. Rule number 2, inverted word order, right? When a sentence begins with no sooner, hardly, scarcely. Now we know that these expressions are used, especially in the past perfect tense, to talk about events that happen one after the other, right? So what you need to remember is the auxiliary verb or the helping verb is placed before the subject. TMI? Too much information? Okay, let's break it down with the help of an example. No sooner he had left the office, then it started raining heavily enough to make him completely wet. So where do you think the error is? This is another pattern, right? So in this question, right, we are familiar with, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, right? No sooner is followed by then. Hardly is followed by when, right? This we already know, and if you look at the context, no sooner is followed by then. So that rule is fine. So is there anything else? So this is correct. I keep saying, I keep giving a tip for you to remember. Most of us are confused. See the first letter of no sooner and then. I look at it as Tamil Nadu. And H and W, I look at it as WH questions. That's how I remember. I've shared this tip earlier, for you to remember. No sooner will always be followed by then. Hardly will always be followed by when. That's how I remember it. So, but is there any other rule? Most of you are coming back and saying option 2. But the answer is, maybe I'll give another 5-10 seconds to see if anybody is able to identify which part has the error. Okay, time's up. The error actually is when you have sentences beginning with no sooner, right? What happens is this auxiliary verb had, right? It comes before the subject. Who's the subject here? He, right? He is our subject. So all you have to do is you have to invert had he instead of he had, right? So this gets inverted when you have sentences beginning with any sentence, right? No sooner, hardly, all of this. The auxiliary verb precedes the subject. That's the rule. That's rule number 2. So the error is in part 1 where you just have to interchange the auxiliary verb. Auxiliary verb is a helping verb, right? You know that. Has, have, had in this case, right? That's rule number 2. So remember that. Okay. So quickly to give you a couple of other examples. Think of any sentence that begins with no sooner. What's the usual construction? No sooner had he left the office, right? That's the right construction and the remaining sentence. Think of other example sentences. No sooner had we heard the noise than we rushed to the spot, right? So again, reiterating the rule, sentence begins with no sooner, we is the subject, but the auxiliary verb had precedes the subject. That's the rule. Okay, let's move on. So rule number 2, when the sentence begins with no sooner, we use an inverted word order. The auxiliary verb goes before the subject. Rule number 3, you need to be familiar with verb plus preposition, adjective plus preposition, noun plus preposition collocations. What do I mean by this? Let's say you can be enthusiastic about something. Enthusiastic about. You can have enthusiasm for something. Enthusiasm for. You can be enthused by or about something. You can be enthused to do something. You follow what I'm saying? Right? So getting yourself familiar with as many such collocations is going to prove very, very useful to you to spot the errors quickly. Let's take a look at a couple of example sentences to understand this better. These days, very few people bother to do the work entrusted upon them. Where do you think the error is? 4 parts. These days, very few people bother to do the work entrusted upon them. Any guesses? These days, which means nowadays, very few people. Seems fine. Very few people, quantifying the people, right? How many people? Very few people. What? Bother to do the work. So basically they don't do their work, right? Whatever is given as a responsibility. Now your clue word is entrusted. The error is in option 3. You don't say entrusted upon, you always entrust. Entrust means what? To give as a responsibility, right? So some responsibility is given to this person. So entrusted, you always entrust something to someone, which means the right preposition that should follow is entrust plus to. So the error is in part 3. You delete upon and you add to. Entrusted to them. That's your context, right? So this is nothing but verb plus preposition collocation. I'm sure you know what collocation are, right? Associated words. These two words go together. So usually in many example sentences, if you see the verb entrust, it will be followed by to. Likewise, you need to be familiar with as many verb plus preposition collocations. Think of other examples, right? I mean, I'm just going to give you examples for entrusted to. I entrusted this secret to her, right? I expected her to kind of be responsible enough not to share the secret to others. She was afraid to entrust. There are other collocations also, but predominantly you'll have entrust with also, but predominantly entrust goes with to. Entrusted the children to the hospital. So likewise, verb plus preposition collocations are lots, right? Wait for. You wait for someone. right? You agree with somebody. You admit to something. You apply for something. Are you following? You argue about something. So these are all verb plus preposition collocations. It's good for you to know as many as possible, right? You focus on something. Are you following? Let's look at one more in the same context, right? Collocations. Now collocations are many, right? This one is verb plus preposition. Let's see if you're able to identify. I'll give you the clue is there is a collocation here. It's incorrect in this given context in front of you. See if you're able to identify it. But I won't say what is the collocation. It's a different collocation. It's not verb plus preposition. Let's read the context. Such natural imagery suggests that the killings were akin with a natural disaster and not a matter of individual responsibility. Where do you think the error is? The error is in part 2. So what do you change that? Akin is an adjective, right? This is an adjective plus preposition collocation. So akin usually goes with what preposition? That's my question. This is in part 2. So this combination is incorrect. What does akin usually go with? Which is the preposition that I'm sure you understand what akin is, right? The meaning. Having the same or very similar properties. So just for people to understand what this means. Akin, the meaning of this word is having the same or very similar properties, qualities or preferences. So such natural imagery suggests that the killings were similar to what? A natural disaster and not a matter of individual responsibility. That's what the context. Now that you understood what akin means, the preposition that goes with akin to, right? So you change with to. So the error is in part 2. So these are adjective plus preposition collocations, right? So think of adjective plus preposition collocations. You know them actually because you've used them. It's just that at the time of the test, you're not able to recollect and apply. Capable of, pleased with, right? These are all adjective plus preposition collocations. Apparent to. Apparent means obvious. Obvious to. Prior to. Right? So basically, rule number 3 is you need to be familiar with as many collocations as possible. It's very helpful. Not just for spotting the error, it's very helpful for fill in the blanks and close passage question types also. Okay, moving on. So rule 3, be familiar with collocation rules. Whether it is verb plus preposition, adjective plus preposition, noun plus, you have noun plus adjective, adjective plus noun collocations, right? So the different collocations, just be familiar with as many as possible. That's all we have for this video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'll be back with yet another tip soon. Until then, stay focused.
A rectangular plot 54 meter long and 46 meter wide has 2 concrete crossroads of equal width running in the middle of the plot. One parallel to the length and the other parallel to the breadth. The rest of the plot is used as park. If the area of the park is 1833 square meter, then find the width of each of the crossroads. So it's all about, drawing the diagram properly. Okay. So what does it say? There is a rectangular plot. The length and breadth are 54 and 46 respectively. So let's draw that. Let's say this is the rectangular plot. The length is 54 and the breadth is 46, right? 54 and 46 respectively, right? Now you see there are 2 concrete crossroads of equal width running in the middle of the plot. And one of these roads is parallel to the length, the other is parallel to the breadth. So there is one concrete crossroad parallel to the length. So how will it look like? Like this.
Find out which part of a sentence has an error, and if there is no error, tell us D. Let us see where is the error here. The laboratory of physics is equipped not only with all state-of-art instruments but also with outstanding physicists. Yes, the error is in part B, as most of you have correctly identified. But my question next is, what is the error with part B? We all know that the error lies in this part.